This is S.K. Ghosh. I would like to welcome you to our seminar series on changes in the seismic load provisions of ASCE 716 to ASCE 722. After all this time, I notice that the title is not right. We are not talking only about seismic, but the, the changes from ASCE 716 to ASCE 722 in general. We are covering the changes, the many significant changes between ASCE 716 and 22 in 10 webinars. Most of you must have attended the prior ones, so you know by now that that is our plan. On the first webinar, we covered the general chapter 1, design load combinations, dead loads, and live loads. The second day was devoted entirely to snow loads, chapter 7 of ASCE 7. Then we got into the seismic provisions. The third seminar was on chapter 11, which is basically seismic ground motion or ground motion related parameters that we use in seismic design. The fourth seminar was on chapter 12, which is seismic design of building structures. The fifth one was on chapter 13, non-structural components. Today is the last seismic seminar on chapter 15, which is non-building structures. I would also like to take at the very end maybe just a couple of minutes to mention chapter 14, which is material specific requirements. And it will be very brief, but what I plan to tell you, I think, is something that needs to be said and understood. So you know by now that we are talking about changes from ASCE 716 to 22. Our topic today, once again, is for most of the day, except for the last couple of minutes, chapter 15, that is seismic design of non-building structures. So what is a building? What is a non-building structure? There is definition of a building in chapter 2 of the IBC, and there is no definition of non-building structure in the IBC itself. In ASCE 7, chapter 11 is where the definitions are. There is a definition for building, and there is also a definition for non-building structures. Okay, so ASCE 7 definition of a building is any structure whose intended use includes shelter of human occupants. Okay, shelter of human occupants. The IBC definition, if you look at it, is not very different from that. The idea is the same. Non-building structure, then, a structure other than a building. A non-building structure by definition is a structure other than a building constructed of a type included in chapter 15. So all non-building structures are not included in chapter 15. In ASCE 7, we are talking only about non-building structures that are included in chapter 15 and within the limits of section 15.1.1, which is the scope section that we will look at. The remainder of the slide shows you ASCE 716 language that was in 15.1.1 that has now been crossed out. If you read the language, you will see why it was crossed out. It is basically not needed. It states the obvious. This is now the beginning of the chapter, section 15.1.1. Okay. The provisions of this chapter, meaning 15, shall apply to unoccupied non-building structures and buildings whose primary purpose is to enclose equipment or machinery and whose occupants are engaged in maintenance or monitoring of that equipment, machinery, or their processes. This language appears maybe another 3-4 places in ASCE 7. The key thing is that we are talking about non-building structures where no one lives or works. Okay, that so these are unoccupied buildings. Nobody lives there, nobody works there habitually.